We're talking about one of the most mysterious and, frankly, intimidating artifacts from the medieval world. It's an 800-year-old manuscript so ridiculously large it's hard to believe it's real. This is the story of the Codex Gigas.
But here's the kicker. For a book that contains the entire Christian Bible, it has this incredibly dark nickname. So how in the world does a monumental work of faith get a name like the Devil's Bible? That is the question we are going to unpack today.
First off, you really have to get a sense of the sheer scale of this thing. It's not just a book, it's more like a library. The whole idea was to have an encyclopedia of all human knowledge from the 13th century, all bound together in one single massive volume.
To really wrap your head around that, just look at the weight. We're talking 165 pounds. That's about 75 kilograms. It took the skins of more than 160 animals just to make the pages. I mean, it's literally heavier than a lot of people.
And it stands an incredible 3 feet tall. Can you imagine trying to curl up and read this thing, let alone trying to write it? The amount of work that went into creating this is almost impossible to comprehend.
So, what's actually in this behemoth? Well, it's a treasure trove of knowledge. You've got the entire Bible, major historical texts, a whole encyclopedia, the history of Bohemia, a calendar, and then, things get a little weird. There are whole sections on magical formulas and medical practices. It was really meant to be a one-stop shop for everything you'd ever need to know. Which, of course, brings us right back to that central mystery. With all of this sacred text and scholarly work inside, why on earth would anybody call it the Devil's Bible? The name just doesn't seem to fit at all. Well, the answer really boils down to two things. First, inside the book, there's this huge, full-page and, honestly, pretty terrifying portrait of the devil. And second, there's the legend of how the book was even made, a story that's somehow even darker than that illustration.
And this isn't some modern tale, This legend goes way, way back, to the Middle Ages itself. It's a story all about desperation, an impossible promise, and a pact that was made in the dead of night.
So here's how the story goes. A monk breaks his holy vows and gets sentenced to a horrific death, being walled up alive. To save himself, he makes this wild promise to create a book containing all human knowledge in just one night. Obviously, as midnight closes in, he realizes there's no way he can do it. So in total desperation, he prays, but not to God. He prays to the devil. The devil shows up, agrees to finish the book, and all he wants in return is the monk's soul. As a final touch, sort of like a signature, he adds that infamous self-portrait. The monk's life was saved, but his soul was lost forever.
It's a fantastic spooky story. But this is where the whole thing takes a truly bizarre turn, where modern science steps in to take a look at this medieval myth.
You'd think it's just a creepy folktale, right? A way to explain this strange, massive book. But when scientists actually analyzed it, they found something pretty unsettling.
And this is where the legend and the science collide in the most chilling way. The legend says the book was created in one night. Modern handwriting analysis came to a conclusion that's almost as unbelievable. The entire book was written by a single person. The handwriting is so incredibly consistent from beginning to end that it shows no signs of the author aging, getting sick, or even just having a change in mood. It's almost as if it was written in one very short, continuous period.
And to put that into perspective, experts estimate it would take one person writing nonstop over 20 years to finish this book. For a single person to maintain that level of consistency over 2 decades, it's just unimaginable. It almost makes the spooky legend feel a little less like a legend, doesn't it? So, is there a more logical explanation?
Well, maybe. There's a reference in the text to a monk named Herman, and his name has this Latin phrase next to it, inclusus. That basically means recluse or shut-in. It was a term for a monk who chose a life of total isolation, often as a form of penance. So, perhaps this Herman the Recluse dedicated his entire lonely life to this one single monumental task.
But the story doesn't stop with its creation. I mean, the fact that this book even survived the last 800 years is almost as miraculous as the legend itself. The Codex Gigas has been on an absolutely incredible journey through some of Europe's most violent and chaotic history.
So it was first made in Bohemia, which is now the Czech Republic. It somehow survived its own monastery being completely destroyed in the 15th century. It was then snatched up by an emperor, stolen by the Swedish army as war loot in 1648, and get this, it was famously rescued from a library fire in 1697 because someone just chucked it out of a window. After 359 years away,
It finally made its way back to Prague in 2007.
So we have the spooky legend, we have the baffling science, and we have this wild history of survival. But the story of the Codex Gigas isn't quite finished. There is one more secret that it's holding on to.
12. At some point in its long, chaotic life, 12 pages were deliberately and carefully cut out of the manuscript. And to this day, nobody knows who did it, or when, or why.
And that leaves us with the final, haunting, unanswerable question. What could possibly have been written on those 12 pages? What was so important, or maybe so dangerous, that someone felt they had to remove it from history forever? Was it just the rules of the old monastery, or was it something else entirely? That remains the final mystery of the Devil's Bible.